Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like this episode. It really kicked up the espionage thing of the angle of, like, you don't know who's working with who and who you can trust, and, like, so many conflicting plans. Like, there's just so many damn moving pieces in this episode that, like, affect other moving pieces, and I like that type of stuff, because it's, like, it just, like, so many plans. Plan A conflicts with someone else's plan B, and then like that also connects to someone else's plan C. Which let's break it down. First and foremost, we have the whole situation where we get introduced to like the main like blacklist we're going after this episode, and that's Obenrader. But basically, like what he does to criminals, he's someone that knows the ins and outs to, at the very least, make it seem like he knows the ins and outs of Townsend's organization. Because basically, his thing is like he kind of basically like. I think the word they said was like he basically kind of consolidates like criminal organizations. So he kind of like does stuff like that for Townsend, because one of the things that Townsend's like business is running, like some of his criminal enterprise, like it's this particular company that was getting audited. Obenrader sent a dude there to clean house. Said dude ended up getting away. So it's like Obenrader's like, you know what? I'm going to handle that myself. So he decides to kind of take action. He also said, like, oh, yeah, home dude is fired. I'm like, does fired mean, like, fired, we're never going to work together again, or fired, like, you're dead because he said, I don't like loose ends, and, like, well, this is someone that knows about your operation. I assume that's kind of like you're dead, because also they clean the entire office, dispose of the body, like, it's a very professional job. And so Reddington's meeting with this thief, car thief or whatever named Tom, and his crew and everything. It's like, oh, him and Reddington have a good relationship. But it's like, yeah, you work for Townsend, right? It's like, yeah, we do a split of 60-40. It's like, well, is it really 60-40? Because home dude, he doesn't, some of those jobs he gives to competitors of yours, and the split is actually 40-30 with him getting like a 10% kickback or something like that of the nature. Like they get 30% less, and so he's getting 50, but he also gets like the 10% kickback. So there's a whole element to it. Well, no, because that might be implying what Neville gets in it. But it's like, the dude's name is Espinoza. It's like, Espinoza is actually doing this without Townsend's knowledge. So it's like, that bastard. He's like, well, thanks for doing me this favor. Because it turns out, wasn't it like his daughter, like, Teva is in like college or whatever, or like graduating college. It's like, oh, wish her the best for me and stuff like that. So they're setting that in motion. Reddington calls in the at the same time, like Donald rolls up, and it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, the suit. They're like kind of implying like, yeah, watch out for him. He's an FBI agent. He's a little kind of saying like he's bit, but not as bit as we would want him to be. And it's like, and you're showing up early, and it's like, why do you always? I love her to be like, why do you always show up early? It's like, oh, sorry to interrupt your conversation with a criminal. And he was like, well, with the crooks, he's like, criminals, Donald's not crook. He was like, yeah, you can call a prostitute an escort, but it's still a hooker. And it's like, there you go, Donald, always seeing the world in black and white. And Donald's like, I see the gray, I just try to avoid it as much as possible, you know? So that ends up being an interesting element to this whole thing. So obviously, Wrestler brings this back to the team, so they're looking into Obenrader. And so at the same time, it turns out Wrestler brought it to the rest of the team about what him and Liz deciphered last episode, and so they decipher the rest of the messages, and it's like, it's vague stuff about like where they're meeting. So Aram is going to get sent to Paris and stuff like that. I think it's interesting. The only people we heard talk to her, I think maybe this speaks volumes, it's Park. To be fair, Park hasn't been a part of the team long enough. It's like Liz kind of went off, like, kind of done her criminal thing, while Park is still kind of new to the team and stuff like that. So she doesn't have the years of bond and family like the rest of the team does. So, like, notice that, like, she's the only one that doesn't really talk to Liz when she's on the phone. Like, Wrestler does, Cooper does, and so does Aram. So it's like, all right, so we're in Paris, and Cooper doesn't tell her. And it's like, we are working together. It's like, yes, I'll give you the information once we get it. But the fact of the matter is, it's a thing where Cooper can't, like, 100% trust her. It's like, yes, we're on the same side about getting Reddington exposed. If and when it comes to that, we'll kind of go from there. But for now, it's like, we'll handle this. Allow us to do the job, because we're the ones who are actually cops now. You're kind of a criminal right now. So, there's also the conversation about Agnes and everything. It's like, oh, how is she doing? And it's like, oh, she's doing really good. Which Park's like, I actually forgot she's dragging her daughter all around, like, while doing all this criminal business. Which Aram's like, her mom abandoned her. There's no way Liz is going to do the same thing. It's like, it's a complicated thing because, like, when you're in that world, like, what do you do? It's not like Katerina had the best choices. I mean, you were being hunted. Like, what do you do? Do you just, like, do you bring your daughter along? It's like, you're just going to put your child, considering the enemy she made, Neville Townsend, like, she would have been, like, you know, it's one thing looking after yourself, looking after a child. It's like, that's no way for any child to grow up on the run like that. So the argument could be made like that, but obviously for Liz, because of her upbringing, it's like, my mom wasn't there, and when I finally got my mom back in my life, all these decades later, I ended up losing her when she just came back in my life, so I'm not going to do that to Agnes. She already lost one parent, I'm not going to do that again, you know? Obviously, it came up a couple seasons back. I'm curious, are we going to tie back anything with Scotty or not? I mean, that is her grandmother and everything, so I don't know if they're going to touch on any of that angle, just because, like, well, now that Tom's going to... Because also probably bringing her back into the fold, because they kind of skate over a lot of, like, because sadly, like, the Blacklist Redemption was once again canceled, so, like, we didn't, like, we got resolution in that story, but we just didn't get to see the resolution of just all this story stuff that plot that happened, and you just didn't get to be a part of. Like, there's a lot of loose ends from that. I'm wondering, do they plan on tying back in? Probably not, because they would have to answer a lot of that. So that's probably, like, one more reason why. I mean, plus also, like, maybe it's just not, you know, maybe Famke Janssen's, I always say her name wrong, probably, like, scheduling and stuff like that, so, because I would think she'd be kind of an ally to have under these circumstances, considering her connections and stuff like that, but maybe it's a thing of, like, right, I don't want to drag you into, you know, something that's kind of my personal beef, you know, so maybe that's another angle too. Like I said, just thinking out loud about the whole situation, but, I just didn't even think about that just now, because I'm like, right, she does have a grandmother she could have been staying with, but it's like, no, staying with your grandma's one thing. I mean, it's like, she got adopted by Sam, and it's like, that, she loves Sam, you know, Liz loves Sam and everything, but it's like, it doesn't, you know, make up for not being with your actual parents, and at least in her case, like, being with her daughter actually being with her, like, that's kind of what's important, so, but, nevertheless, so, we have that piece to the puzzle. Obviously, Liz is in contact with the FBI, but Townsend is listening in on that. We also find out that Tom reported to Townsend about, like, Espinoza, which so that's, I guess that's his go-to way of handling everybody. That's interesting. I thought, Rudiger got this special treatment. It's like, no. Everyone gets that treatment. It's like, oh, you, like, he was some body blows and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I guess it's like, oh, it keeps me healthy and fit, beating the ever-living shit out of people who've wronged me. So, interesting workout regimen. Like I said, he might have done it to someone else besides Rudiger. This might be the third time he's done it. I'm not sure. I feel like there was someone else besides Rudiger and Espinoza this episode, but I think there was someone else. Like, I'm not remembering correctly, but nevertheless. So, but then we also find out later on, it's like, oh, cool. So, doing that, so, like, Espinoza probably really wasn't doing... I mean, we never got a conclusion on whether Espinoza really was doing that or not. Maybe Reddington found out Espinoza was doing that and decided to take advantage of the circumstances, or he lied and it's just like, let's remove one of... I mean, to be fair, this is one of Townsend's people, so I don't give a shit. So, you know, just the price of doing business. It'd make me feel better if he actually... I don't know if it'd make me feel better, but it's like, if he's kind of innocent of, like, what Reddington's kind of framing him for, it'd make me feel a little bit better if he actually was guilty of it. I don't know, who knows? From a criminal standpoint, at the very least. But, like I said, we never just got confirmation whether that was just BS for Reddington, or, like I said, whether or not Reddington actually found out about it and decided to use that against Espinoza. But, he needed Espinoza removed from the picture so that, he can go to, like, get Obenrader kind of brought into the fold, because that's what Reddington used, because it's like, ultimately, they're tracking Charles, the one survivor and everything, and they go to his brother's cabin or whatever to talk to him, and lo and behold, it's like, oh, like, we found Obenrader arresting him, he's not talking, especially Reddington's like, I never expected him to talk, because truth be told is, considering, Townsend's methods, it's like, oh, he doesn't want, Obenrader doesn't want everyone he loves and cares about kind of dead, because that's what Townsend does. He doesn't just, you know, burn your house down, he burns down the whole goddamn village. Kind of bloodthirsty dude that he is. So there's a part of me that's, I thought that was, just really interesting. Like, yeah, like Reddington, like always, kind of has other secret moves because basically he wanted to use the FBI as a means of setting up a introduction, because he basically goes to this other dude and it's like, okay, Priya's kind of on your payroll. I want to take her off your hands. And it's like, okay, so if you don't want, because it's like, oh, pennies on a dollar. Pennies on a dollar. I've never paid pennies on a dollar. In fact, I overpay. Dembe literally has to get on me all the time about pulling back how much I'm spending. And I'm like, it's kind of neat that Dembe has to be like, Reddington, Raymond, you're spending too much money. Like, just pull it back a little bit. It's like, it's just kind of interesting to know that that's a kind of businessman that he is. It's like, I actually overpay, because by overpaying, you kind of grease the palms a little easier. But it's also like, oh, you don't want to do what we want? Okay, so we'll go to the 18th hole and then we'll drop you. Done it before, we'll do it again. So it's like, okay, so hook us up with Priya and Dembe will drop you off wherever you need to go. So, which I love the Priya introduction, because it's like the guy is opening up that door and everything, and Reddington's on the inside sleeping. Like, oh, sorry. He's like, I've slept in I've dozed off in caves and coffins. I have not slept that good since math class. And it's just like, Priya, stick around. Niles, you're going to go for a walk, and me and Priya, we're going to have a conversation. I was like, okay, so that's interesting. And then a conversation with Priya, him basically being, because she's like, I know who you are. Because at first she's kind of like reluctant, but it's like, I know who you are. He's like, oh, good. Then like, I can back up my promises. It's not just about like me paying you just to do whatever jobs. It's like, I will be giving you so much money, not only to pay for all the gadgets and tools and suction cups you use, to scale buildings. Well, you've ever scaled a building before? And she was like, no, but it's a long dream. He's like, I hope you have a long list of dreams, because I'm here to make that list plausible for you. I might give you all the time, money, and resources necessary. But won't you also want to do a job where you can basically leave all your clients behind? And when you rob and when you steal, it isn't for someone else. It's just, and it's not for a job. It's because it's just, oh, I love stealing, so I'm just doing it because it's fun and it's my passion. I'm presenting you that opportunity. All you have to do for me is one job. And it's like, what's that? Infiltrate Neville Townsend's organization. I was wondering if Priya was going to be like, no. Townsend's a psychopath. I'm not putting myself in that line of fire. Maybe she's aware of Townsend. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's willing to take the risk. That's a development. We'll circle back. Well, you know what? Screw it. Since we're on the topic, I thought it was interesting when we once again finding out who knows what and what everyone's true plans is. Reddington's real plan of like, oh no, I'm not trying to infiltrate Townsend's organization. I'm trying to kill Neville Townsend. He made it clear like, oh, let me show you what it's like to really exact revenge. So, Priya wasn't it was to infiltrate his organization by killing and kill him, not just to be there and gather information. Because that's where Obenrader plays a role, which is like, obviously set up the whole thing to make it look like, oh, like, I saved you. The FBI was able to send you off to a CIA black site, but here we are. And so, all these files, yeah, these are all your clients. So either you help with the Priya thing, or you get her inside the organization, or you can be our insider. Either way, fact of the matter is, here's your list of people. Like, what happens with that? You get your client list back if you do this for me. So he has to be the one that kind of makes introductions for Townsend's, which, once again, so many moving pieces. Because circling back, you have a Rom in Paris, happy, got his croissant and everything, and then lo and behold, I was like, she's going to show up, isn't she? And lo and behold, Liz shows up and is like, is that a croissant? Oh my God, thanks. And bites into it. He's like, what are you doing? And she's just like, oh, like, it's like, oh, I knew this, I knew that, so I knew, that the FBI flies in here, and the G5, this and that, and then, here we are, croissants. And Aram is just kind of so upset. It's like, and just like, honestly, that like moment with Liz, it was like, for one, I think it's supposed to kind of represent kind of easily sliding back into like the old days and everything. But her way of jumping in like that was a very like smooth Reddington way of handling things. Like that's some shit Reddington would do, would just kind of show up and like, oh hey, is that a croissant? Like, oh I love it. Like she's giving up. Like there are moments like that where you see the true essence of like Reddington, like the parts of Reddington that are really there for her, like that he's kind of taught her. Like that's a very Reddington move in my opinion. There's other moves she makes that it's like Reddington-esque. She can be very like harsh like Reddington, but sometimes like she pulls her belt like I said, she works that tightrope sometimes of like, oh, what I'm willing to do like in the past. and having reservations about it, but then like also having moments like this. You know, obviously they go in there trying to get information about, trying to get surveillance footage because they're trying to get, you know, Reddington meeting with his handler, which we end up, obviously we finally find out his name, and it's Ivan. Yvonne. Is it? I forgot how they said it. It's like Ivan, but like that's not how you properly pronounce it. I think it is like Yvonne. I'm just gonna say Ivan. But him, Liz got the from him because it's like, yeah, Rocco pointed a gun at him. It's like, and the dude's like, I thought you were FBI. I was like, no, he's FBI. Rocco's certifiable. So those surveillance tape. And even later on, Rom's like, when it's all said and done, like, if I wasn't here, would you have let Rocco pull the trigger on him? And Liz is like, no. And that's like the thing of like, I believe her. I don't think she would have because even Reddington like threatens people like that with like, oh, I'm gonna shoot you. I'm not actually gonna do it. Or at the very least, push came to shove, I don't think she would have done it. Reddington, he would have found another means of probably doing it. I don't think he would have pulled the trigger under those circumstances either. But I do believe Liz, because it's like that. She isn't all willy-nilly about like, I'm just going to kill people just for the hell of it, you know? But for Aram, he talks about the fact is that it's like, how is Agnes really? He's like, no, she's doing good. We're staying with this woman, which someone has hit me up to say that they had their reservations about who she really is, that maybe she's not who she claims to be, that maybe she's manipulating Liz. We'll see whether that ends up being the case or not, whether like there's sincerity to that situation or not. But Liz is like, yeah, she's actually really doing good. And Aram's like, I don't agree with the way you've handled a lot of stuff, but the fact is, I am impressed. It's not supposed to be like oh my God, like, it's not meant to be a compliment, but it is the thing of like you balancing everything, working with us, your fight with Reddington, and also like, being a mom. It's like, that can't be the easiest thing, which for Liz, it's like, it's a nice acknowledgement. She's like, she hasn't gotten a lot of that lately, just because it's like, a lot of people obviously condemn a lot of her actions, and even Aram does. It's like, so also the thing of like, yeah, you ate my croissant. It's like the worst, he's like, that might be the worst thing you've done. She's like, I'm doing some pretty awful things. He's like, yes, but that, because I wanted it so badly, this might be the worst thing that you've ever done. But he even admits, like, talks about it with Cooper later on. Honestly, working with Liz felt good, like, despite everything, because it felt like old times. Like, they might be on the different side of this, everything now, but for him, it felt good. It felt nice, So there's that angle. The FBI helping with Reddington's introduction, Priya's introduction to Neville, because it's like, right, Reddington's giving us the opportunity to follow Priya like that way back to Neville, because ultimately he knows that like, cause we can't 100% trust that whatever information Priya brings to Reddington, which I'm wondering, what would he have done? I guess it's like, well, she would have killed Neville, so there would have been no like, I guess he would have found a way to get her out of there, so it was like the FBI wouldn't catch her. But it's also like, yeah, he'd have to answer that for that, but it's also a thing of like, it's fine. Like, in a sense of like, he'll probably like skirt around that, because it's like, because that's also a conversation too of like, helping out with the Priya thing for the FBI. It's like, well, Townsend needs to be wiped out because he's a very dangerous guy, and he's very dangerous not only for just what he does, but also Liz could be in danger, kind of being mixed up with him. So us wiping him out is kind of like a good thing. So, but then like, it's the whole conversation about how to handle the Ivan thing, getting Liz to kidnap, because Liz was like, it's like, because they legally can't get him because he's a Russian citizen, and like they don't have like the jurisdiction to do that. But it's like, well, we may not have that, and obviously Main Justice isn't going to sign off that, but Liz is a criminal and she is working with us, so we could. It's like, he's like, I know it's a sucky idea and it sucks, but let's kind of think about it for a second. And Parker's like, yeah, it still sucks, but Cooper signs off on it because it's kind of like, it's kind of the lesser of the evils, because it's like, yeah, it's a bad idea. There are worse options. And it's like, this might be our only means to get ahead of Reddington, finding out the truth about this N13 thing, but also bring us, this whole situation with him also brings us closer to taking down Neville as well. So it's kind of like once again, there's so many wars on so many fronts, going on at the same time. So, what's so interesting too is like Townsend has been listening in on her conversations. Yes, she's bouncing from different like burner phones, but they are listening in from Wrestler's side of things. So the whole point is to find out whether or not, because it's like, whoa, she's supposed to be not at good terms with the FBI, yet she's working with the FBI Townsend's kind of willing to kind of give her a little, because he's willing to kind of trust her. But after the Espinosa thing, it's like, well, I am too trusting. So it's like, all right, we got to find out which side of the line Liz is working on. And at the end of the day, he wants to pretend like, oh, I'm trusting you. So it's like, I need you to do this job for me. He ends up setting her up with the whole retrieving Priya and bringing her there thing, which once again, they're unaware. But obviously, like, Liz doesn't say anything over the phone, but it's like, and it's a good thing she didn't, because Wrestler could have, well, I don't know if he would have brought up like Priya being on the inside of Neville's organization, because that would have also meant like, oh, right, we're working with Reddington, and Liz wouldn't have appreciated that, because it also would have helped Reddington take down her partner and helping take him down. So it would have been a thing of like, I think Wrestler was, but I'm glad he didn't let that slip about like, but it's just like, once again, the competing like plans and stuff like that. Neville doing that accidentally screwed over the FBI, because they weren't able to follow Priya back to him. But Liz was unaware of that, and the FBI was unaware of that, because Liz just thought she was doing something for Townsend. She figured that Townsend was trying to keep her busy, but she wasn't sure what that was about. That's because Townsend's trying to get to Ivan before they could. Because it's like, yeah, she's working with the FBI, but it's like, even Townsend being like, yeah, but we all do have the common enemy of Reddington. But it's also like, yeah, but you might not have heard it, Neville, but we heard that side of the conversation, and it sounds like she's pretty against you, as that kind of pits them kind of against you as well, as kind of like the whole point. So I just thought that was fascinating. Priya doesn't have an opportunity to poison him, because at the time of him trying to like poison him, like Neville leaves because they got Ivan. And I love that whole thing of like at the end, like who got him, because it's like, wait, because it's like, well, because obviously Liz had her team waiting to get Ivan, but it's like, it's like, no, like there's special cops here, and it's like, did the FBI do this? And it's like, no, even the FBI being like, wait, he's been taken. Did Liz do it? We haven't been able to get in contact with Liz, so maybe that's a good sign. So it's like everyone trying to think everyone else did it, not knowing that because she doesn't know that Townsend's been listening in on her conversation. So once again, he's a little bit more trusting, but his people aren't, because it's like, you think you're giving Liz enough rope to potentially hang Reddington, but she might be giving you just enough rope to hang all of us. Once again, Liz isn't the forgiving type, because her mom was on the run for decades. She lost time with her mom. She ultimately ended up losing her mom because of you. So taking down Reddington, she's eventually going to come after you too. Like, she hasn't really explained it, but maybe the argument could be Liz hasn't thought that far ahead. She's so focused on bringing Reddington down, N13 down, that's all she cares about. That's all she's thinking about. So, but we find out that it is, in fact, Townsend who has it. And now Reddington knows that Ivan's been kidnapped. And obviously, it's a whole... Which I also really appreciate, circling back, that, like, Reddington was like, oh, yeah, honestly, I know we were supposed to be a little more trusting and telling the truth, Cooper, Harold, but here's the truth. Which is, like, ironic, considering, like, oh, Cooper has information he's keeping from you. So it's not like it was going to be like a two-way street. It was always going to be kind of one way anyway. But to be fair, you both kind of play by keeping a lot of stuff close to the vest, because they need to find out. They don't want to trust Reddington with this information. It's like they wouldn't even want to bring it up unless they can kind of confirm it for themselves first before bringing it to Reddington, because it's like, we'll deal with him need be. But it's like, really, you're going to take down Reddington? Because that was like Liz's whole thing at the beginning. It's like, yes, because at least that way we'll be able to come at him from the perspective of a enemy of the state, which that's also a conversation later on too, because I mean Mr. Reddington's kind of on our side, right? But it's like, that's the whole thing of like I said, it's so cool that, like, it's really espionage angle. Like, we don't know who to trust and who's on whose side. I mean, yes, Mr. Reddington's always going to do stuff that is best for his interests. He is always going to have some ulterior motive. It's like, yeah, he'd share information with us. Well, no, most likely he wouldn't, because he just keep it to himself and benefit it from some shape or form, because he usually always has, like, a contingency or, like, some alternative reason for doing what he's doing, especially asking us to do something for him, so... But, yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this all converges next episode, as Neville's going to be interrogating Ivan. I don't think he's going to get any information, but it's like, I think it's come up, like, he knows who Neville is. He doesn't say anything, but it's like, yeah, you're the one over behind the archive. Reddington being N13 and everything. He's like, whatever you two are working on, I need to, he's like, I've got a lot of questions why. And then his right hand dude, like, starts squeezing his fist. So it's like, Ivan's about to get tortured. So, almost kind of reminds me of, like, obviously the Ilya, stuff too. Like, obviously he was kind of kidnapped for what he knew as well. So it kind of reminds me of that. But dude, it's going to be interesting to see. Priya's still kind of involved in this. She's kind of like in a starting vetting process, but like she's kind of got an in. Still presents an opportunity. Like, well, her in might present an opportunity of saving Ivan rather than just killing Townsend. And I'm wondering, how long will it be before Liz finds out? Wait, Townsend made this move, because she'll probably go, "Hey, you guys got Ivan? No, we thought you had Ivan. Wait, I don't have Ivan either. Do you think Reddington? No. Shit. Oh, God, Townsend, like, so, dude, I'm so excited to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.